I'm a real-life paleontologist here to react to the new Jurassic World Rebirth trailer. I'm a cosplaying paleontologist, or as so many people love to call me, Dino Mommy. So let's get started.
Please open the door for me!
On the island we're headed to, 24 species have survived there alone.
The theme park owners did experimental work, leaving only the worst ones here.
So already, I really like the tone of the movie so far. The first scene where the guy is kind of like begging to have the door opened for him really reminds me of Alien, like especially the latest Alien Romulus, which doesn't bother me. I really love Alien. Alien's really like my favorite horror movie other than the first Jurassic Park. And I'm really glad that with the first scene and then kind of the subsequent T-Rex scenes, it seems like they're really like trying to get that element of horror back into these movies, because that's really how dinosaurs, Mesozoic dinosaurs, not living birds, which are also dinosaurs. That's how Mesozoic dinosaurs would really feel to us, I think, if we were able to be in the same timeline as them, like the characters are in Jurassic Park. It would be a very scary experience, and these things would be a lot more capable of killing us than we would be of them. So to me, that's just like a more realistic portrayal emotionally and physically of the dinosaurs than it has been in the Jurassic World series overall. I mean, there still definitely was like, there were hunt scenes and things like that, but it didn't feel, to me, like the way that the cinema was done, it didn't feel like these dinosaurs were things that we should really be afraid of, like they were in the original Jurassic Park series, which I think is a lot more realistic. Also on the paleontology side, it's really cool to see how they're trying to make these dinosaurs, especially the large theropod dinosaurs like T-Rex, be like more quick moving and smarter and more capable of hunting humans. That's something that they didn't really do in the original Jurassic Park. Now, to be fair, our science, dinosaur research and science, has come a long way since Jurassic Park. So obviously there's no way they could have incorporated what we know now into the movies. But what we know now about the real T-Rex, and you should actually go check out my video on the real T-Rex to learn more about it. But the real T-Rex is much more terrifying than the one that you all saw in the original Jurassic Parks and even in Jurassic World. It was very quick moving. It could run at about 20 miles per hour, which doesn't seem that fast, but humans can only run at a top speed of about 15 miles per hour, and that's if you're an Olympic athlete. So basically, T-Rex is always going to be able to outrun you and catch. And in this new Jurassic World Rebirth, it seems like they're kind of showing more of those realistic, terrifying aspects of T-Rex. The fact that it would have been a much faster moving animal, the fact that it would have like had keen sight, even if you were standing still or even if you were underwater, like they show a T-Rex attacking underwater. I think that's not something that would be unrealistic. They haven't shown T-Rex swimming, which is great. They show it stomping through shallow water, which is something that we do have evidence for, of big theropods stomping underwater, ambushing prey. So that's something that so far is pretty realistic. I think the only thing that's a little unrealistic about the T-Rex so far that I see, other than the fact that it's not covered in feathers, which it likely would have been, is the fact that it is still probably moving a little too slow. But I can kind of give them a pass because it seems like they were only kind of showing T-Rex running in the water so far, and water maybe would have slowed this big animal down enough for people to paddle away. So I'm gonna give them a pass for now. So yeah, let's keep going.
Don't see that every day or ever.
Let's go.
If we get this DNA, millions of lives are saved.
Maybe we should make this quick, huh?
Okay, so those sauropods that were shown in the trailer, they do look really cool. I'm glad that we have some cool new sauropods to talk about in Jurassic World Rebirth. They are apparently supposed to be Titanosaurs. Now, to me, it was really hard to tell. I think the size is a little too small to be a Titanosaur. To be accurate, they really should be like a lot bigger than the people, unless the trailer is kind of skewing the optics so it looks like they're kind of smaller compared to the people in the movie. But most Titanosaurs would be literally whale-sized, like almost blue whale-sized, and some of them would be even larger than that. The other thing about these Titanosaurs is their tails are super long. That's something that could be true for some species of Titanosaurs, but we're not really sure. Usually when we find a Titanosaur, we only find like a leg bone of it, or a couple leg bones, or a couple vertebrae. We've pretty much, I don't think we've ever been able to find a skull of a Titanosaur. Most of the skeletal remains of Titanosaurs are missing, and we don't really know why that is, but it seems like the leg bones and the vertebrae are what preserve the best. So anytime you see a whole Titanosaur skeleton in a museum, that is reconstructed based on modeling and, you know, different mathematic models that we can use, comparing Titanosaur leg bones to the bones of other sauropod or other long-necked dinosaurs to kind of build out their skeleton. So the Titanosaurs here, they seem a little smaller. The tails might be a little too long. They really likely are, especially how they're so like skinny and long at the end. That kind of doesn't make sense to me. I feel like they would have more of a taper to have balance. Like, I don't think that tiny tail is going to be able to balance this huge body of a Titanosaur. The other main inaccuracy I see on the Titanosaurs is these kind of almost Spinosaurus-like spiny frills that are along the neck and along the back of these guys in the movie. We don't have any evidence for something like that. At the most, in some species of Titanosaurs, there are some extra like hardened osteoderms or extra hardened like bony, scaly bits along the backs of some species of Titanosaurs, not all of them. But that would, at the most, in real life, probably just look like some little, you know, bony knobs along the neck and back of these guys. It wouldn't be something like a big frill. That's something that we can see in other sauropods, but it's not something that's present in Titanosaurs. So these sails are not really something that we have evidence for in any Titanosaurs. There's something that we have possible evidence for in a Mosasaurus, and we're still trying to figure out like what the possible use for these things would be. But it's really only present in sauropods like a Mosasaurus that are more closely related to things like Diplodocus. So it's not really a Titanosaur feature. Now, a recent paper suggested that a Mosasaurus and other dinosaurs that have really tall neural spines that may have supported these sort of sails are likely to have had these sails. That's what the current data supports. And paleontologists think that the sails were probably used for some combination of thermoregulation, so basically controlling the temperature in your body, which makes sense because these would be really big animals that might need some help with thermoregulation. And these sails could also help with kind of relieving the pressure of the neck vertebrae, taking stressful forces away from the vertebrae to allow the neck to move more easily and more freely. We still haven't really found enough of these sauropods with sails to determine whether these sails would have been used for display to find a mate, so that's something that we're still not sure about. Anyway, I will link the paper on this down below. Okay, now let's move on to see what else is gonna happen in Jurassic World Rebirth.
Maybe we should make this quick, huh? Time to move.
We put ourselves in a place where we don't belong. Survival is a long shot.
That's kind of our specialty.
So it also seems like the scientists in this movie are going to be going to an island that created dinosaurs for Jurassic Park that were kind of too defective, too aggressive, whatever, to be used in the actual park, and so they kind of left them on this island. I think that's an interesting concept, and I could definitely see that being realistic if Jurassic Park was real. What is really unrealistic to me is the idea that some DNA of the dinosaurs is going to hold a cure for millions of people, millions of lives, unless they're talking about saving millions of dinosaur lives, which wouldn't make sense. And I don't think Jurassic Park even could make millions of dinosaurs. That would be very expensive, and they wouldn't really fit on the earth very well with all of the humans that are here. Dinosaurs are most closely related to birds, so it would kind of be like taking bird eggs or even like crocodile eggs and expecting to get some kind of cure for a human disease out of it. Humans are mammals, and we're kind of one of the most recently evolved mammals at that, so we are very far away on the evolutionary tree of life from dinosaurs. So that part is really unrealistic unless they were trying to use the DNA of the dinosaurs as some kind of genetic blueprint to see how they edited the genes of the dinosaurs, and maybe they could use that to edit genes of the humans. But if that was the case, I don't see why they couldn't just find the doctors who had, you know, edited genes for Jurassic Park or Jurassic World before and ask them to edit human genes and create some kind of cure. So that part is really not kind of viable in the real world, but I understand that, you know, it's a movie, but I just wanted to point that out. Now let's move on to the pterosaur that we saw there. Okay, so the pterosaur pictured here, it is supposed to be Quetzalcoatlus in my opinion. I've seen a lot of speculation about this on the internet and on Reddit, especially saying, you know, this can't be Quetzalcoatlus because it has this sort of backward facing ridge at the tip of its beak, and I would agree with you because there is no evidence for Quetzalcoatlus having that backwards facing crest. Now there is this picture going around on the internet of Quetzalcoatlus monstrosus, and as far as I can tell from my research, this is a fake scientific name with a fake silhouette that people have been creating to match the Jurassic World Rebirth pterosaur, which is always really super frustrating. That's one thing that, you know, I don't love. I love Jurassic Park and Jurassic World. They're some of the movies that inspired me to become a paleontologist and study dinosaurs for a living. But it is really frustrating when I personally think like these animals, dinosaurs and flying reptiles, which pterosaurs are, by the way, they are not dinosaurs, they're flying reptiles. The thing is, like, when you put these things with inaccuracies on the screen, sometimes, especially in today's internet, you're going to create a space where it's difficult for people to understand what's real and what's just made up by Hollywood. And in this case, this crest looks really cool, but it's definitely something that's made up by Hollywood, something we don't have evidence for. And it's not even something that any other pterosaur has. There's a huge diversity of pterosaurs to choose from, including Quetzalcoatlus. So it's a little disappointing that, you know, this Quetzalcoatlus was just kind of like had some weird thing added onto its bill just to make it look cool. Because yeah, it looks kind of cool, but I don't think it looks cooler than the real Quetzalcoatlus. Of course, you can make the argument, you know, this is Jurassic World, Jurassic Park. They're going to genetically modify these things to look a certain way, maybe to make them scarier or prettier so that they can make more money in the park. And like, that is a good argument. But I guess I don't really see like how it applies in this case, because I mean, Quetzalcoatlus is already this huge scary thing. I don't really think that tiny crest adds anything personally, but let me know what you guys think. Some paleontologists think that Quetzalcoatlus couldn't fly. There's been a couple like studies trying to use computer modeling to test whether these things could fly. And some of the models say that they could, and others say that they couldn't. The one thing we all kind of agree on is when they weren't flying, these things were probably walking on all fours and grasping with their little claws, their front claws as well, so just to be able to support their weight. So I mean, this depiction of Quetzalcoatlus kind of grabbing across the cliff and trying to reach the main characters could be a realistic one. I personally think that Quetzalcoatlus did fly because I don't really see what the point would be of having these huge wings if Quetzalcoatlus didn't fly. I mean, usually when we see, you know, birds that can't fly, their wings have become very tiny for flightless birds, and they become what we call vestigial. Like, they don't really serve a purpose anymore. They're really tiny compared to the body of the bird. I just don't really see how Quetzalcoatlus could keep up this huge wingspan and not have the ability to fly. Even if it was vestigial, I just think we would have found more species of Quetzalcoatlus or more fossils of it where, you know, it had a reduced wingspan, if that were the case, if it couldn't fly, and that's not true. We haven't found that. So in my opinion, yes, these guys did fly. No, they did not have that crest. So now let's keep going.
That's kind of our specialty.
She's scared. She's scared of.
Come on, run!
We're not gonna let you get hurt, okay?
To me, this dinosaur looks like a baby Protoceratops. Super cute. I love Protoceratops. It's a really cool dinosaur because it's one of the only dinosaurs that we know a shit ton about. We've been able to find huge age series of Protoceratops, like everything from eggs and embryos and just hatched Protoceratops up to adults. If you go to the American Museum of Natural History, you can actually see this age series on display in the Ornithischian Dinosaur Hall. And that's really cool because we can learn how dinosaurs' skeletons developed, and it can teach us a lot about how they lived and what they were really like. So I personally love Protoceratops. Also, they're super cute. They're herbivorous dinosaurs. Like I said, they're Ornithischian dinosaurs. They are ceratopsians, so they're most closely related to Triceratops and dinosaurs like that. And from what I can see here, it looks pretty accurate the way that they've depicted Protoceratops. The only thing is that it seems to be missing like its little high up pinky, but that could be kind of hidden by the backpack, so I'm gonna be giving them a pass on that for now.
We're not gonna let you get hurt, okay?
Okay, so this pterosaur, it's pretty cool, but it kind of comes across a little bit like a big velociraptor with wings, except that when you look at the snout, it's pretty, you know, flattened from the forward angle. To me, this looks kind of like a pterosaur called Dimorphodon, which we actually have fossils of. Although the thing about Dimorphodon is that it was much smaller. It was only about 3 feet long and it had about a 4.6 foot wingspan. So that would be a much smaller animal, although it was a very vicious small animal with sharp teeth. So this looks like, you know, maybe the Jurassic Park evil scientists wanted to create a giant Dimorphodon, which of course would be a lot scarier for the public coming into the park. So I guess if you throw in some Jurassic Park logic, it does make sense, but this thing in real life would be a lot smaller. It also kind of looks like the wings of this guy in the movie kind of recurve backwards, and it looks like they're super long and kind of go along with his tail in length. That's not something that would be in the real Dimorphodon. Dimorphodon would just have a normal wingspan that goes straight out of its body, although it would have a long tail, so that part's accurate. The last thing that's really incorrect about this guy is the way that his legs are. So the way that the legs are positioned and built, it looks like to me is like that of a dromaeosaur, velociraptor, theropod, where, you know, the ankles are high up off the ground and the knees are higher than that. So it kind of creates this kind of horse-like leg going on. That's not something that would be really present in Dimorphodon. In most pterosaurs, including Dimorphodon, the ankle and the toes would be flat on the ground. So you wouldn't have this velociraptor-like pose where like the ankle is up here off the ground. It would be more like the foot would be like this, where the ankle and the toes are all on the ground together for pterosaurs. So this is kind of like an inaccurate position for the pterosaurs, and I don't think they would really run like a velociraptor. It seems like they kind of combine those two ideas into one. And again, remember, pterosaurs are not dinosaurs, so this doesn't really make sense evolutionarily or genetically. Pterosaurs are more closely related to reptiles like snakes and lizards. They are flying reptiles, whereas like theropods like Velociraptor and T-Rex, they're more closely related to birds. So these things are not genetically compatible, if that makes sense.
The Mosasaurus. We found it?
No, it found us.
Now, the last thing I'm going to comment on here is the Mosasaurus. I've already talked about this a lot before in different TikTok videos. The main issue with the Mosasaurus in Jurassic World and Jurassic Park is that it is 3 times larger than the largest mosasaur we know about, which is Titanosaurus. The snout is also a lot shorter in the Jurassic Park variant than it would likely be in Titanosaurus. It's also super unlikely that Mosasaurus would be able to swim in a really acrobatic way like it's shown here. It certainly could not, as far as we know, based on the many Mosasaurus fossils we have and mathematical models. It certainly was not able to jump out of the water like a dolphin, let alone, you know, do a little twist like a dolphin in a fucking SeaWorld show. So that's kind of hilarious to watch. And we know this because the real Mosasaurus just had kind of a long tail that's flattened on either side, and it likely would have used his tail kind of like the rudder of a ship. So you can think about this thing kind of swimming fast for its size, but it's still moving pretty slowly. It's kind of like, think of a big ship like the Titanic or something. If you're going to be just kind of moving the rudder to steer the ship, you're not going to be able to do quick acrobatic moves or jump out of the water. That's just not something that Mosasaurus was really capable of. And studies show that Mosasaurus may have been able to have, you know, bursts of speed where it went a little faster, but it would not have been able to keep up that speed. So it would have likely been more like an ambush predator than something like this that could actually chase you at a quick pace over a long distance. Finally, they kind of make a comment in here suggesting that the Mosasaurus is super smart and saying, you know, oh, we didn't find the Mosasaurus found us. Well, there haven't really been studies on mosasaur intelligence. I would guess that they wouldn't be nearly as intelligent as, you know, theropod dinosaurs, which are more closely related to birds are. We know that reptiles in general are not as intelligent as birds. Many birds are as intelligent as primates at the least, whereas reptiles are, you know, a lot less intelligent than that. So to me, like, a mosasaur hunting us is unlikely. That's something that we would find to be more likely in dinosaurs like Velociraptor and T-Rex, or in mammals like whales, orca whales, things like that, because we know that they have higher intelligence. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this real paleontologist reaction to the new Jurassic World Rebirth, and I am super excited to see it in theaters. Like I said, Jurassic Park and Jurassic World are really close to my heart because the first Jurassic Park movie is one of the big things that inspired me to become a paleontologist. So thank you, Jurassic Park, and I hope you guys have a good time at the movie. Let me know what your thoughts are below. Like and subscribe for more.